Welcome back to Your Ag Empire, where we roll up our sleeves, dig in the dirt, and uncover the secret to success in the world of agriculture. I'm your host, Jonathan Harrelson, a Texas farmer and rancher, farm risk consultant, and commodity coach. New episodes drop on Wednesdays on Spotify, Apple, and YouTube, and we'd be honored to have you as a subscriber. Welcome back to Your Ag Empire. I'm Jonathan Harrelson. Today, we're joined by Shaye Reilly, a licensed professional counselor out of Oklahoma. She specializes in trauma and loss and is certified in rural resilience and farm response. Now, in this episode, we talk about growing concerns about mental health issues, including depression and suicide within the agricultural industry, particularly among farmers and ranchers facing financial and family pressures. We also discuss the importance for farmers and ranchers to prioritize their mental health and seek out resources and support, as depression and anxiety are real issues within the agricultural community. Shaye also gives us some helpful tips on how to seek help for yourself or someone else. Shaye, welcome to the show. We are glad to have you.
I'm glad to be here. Thanks for having me.
Shaye is also a trusted partner of Empire Ag, and you've worked with a lot of our clients. Give us a little bit of background on you and your profession and what your title is, and kind of a little bit of what you do.
Okay. So I am a licensed counselor in Oklahoma, and I have owned an outpatient mental health clinic for almost 2 decades. I'm certified in trauma, grief, and loss, and I'm also certified in agriculture needs. Over the years, kind of focused on agriculture needs and the need for outpatient mental health treatment for people in rural areas.
Gotcha. I guess mental health has been a big topic in agriculture for the last, I would say, couple of years. It's really come to the forefront, and even of the last couple of weeks, I've noticed an uptick in suicide. Just randomly, something will pop up on Facebook about somebody telling me, hey, I lost so and so due to suicide, and they were farmers. On the outside, they looked successful. They looked like everything was good, but is this a bigger problem that agriculture as a whole is facing right now?
Yes. Since the pandemic and just the changes with, the country and, economics, it has increased significantly. Suicide rate in farmers and ranchers. I think I mentioned at the retreat that Oklahoma State University received a $500,000 grant in 2022, where they focused on rural mental health and farmers and ranchers with the opioid addiction, the suicide rate, and just the inability to hook up with an appropriate provider due to work schedules.
Well, and I think too, you're probably unique in the fact that I don't know a whole lot of counselors that really focus on agriculture. Matter of fact, I think you're the only one that I have ran into in the country. Is there very many of you out there that focus on our demographic?
I don't know any in this area. I did, when I sought out to get this extra certification, when I was researching Oklahoma State University, there was a gentleman that they interviewed from someone on the East Coast. And so I just got the same certification. Now, obviously, anyone that's licensed can provide care for multiple areas. It is
Sure.
just this career path is so different, and it comes with a different set of challenges. So it's really just about finding the best fit for you.
And I think it takes somebody that kind of understands our community. I mean, you're in rural America.
Mhm.
You go to church with these people. You see them at the restaurant. I mean, you know what it's like to walk in the shoes of farmers and ranchers. And I think that's something that I think we have a stigma where we're such a misunderstood group.
Yes.
Um, we want somebody that's on our side in a
Right.
way.
Very
Um,
quiet group, very sullen, very humble, a lot of integrity, and they don't like having to reach out for outside help. Um, Struggle with showing any type of weakness.
I guess for folks that are struggling, like, and they're looking for that counsel, like, how does that relationship work? Like, what does it look like? I guess there's always been a stigma of, like, I can fix myself, and you've always been taught, just bury up in the work and just get it done and just suck it up, buttercup. And
Right.
where do you know that I need to come see you? How would I know?
Well, you probably won't know. The people that care about you will be the ones that recognize that things aren't going appropriate. And so, if people in the community start noticing, things aren't being kept up the way they typically are, um, if you're not showing up for church, if you're not showing up for school events, if your children are acting different, if your wife is acting different, there are signs. And most individuals, because it is such a private career, you don't even want to say to your friend or church friend that, hey, I'm worried about you.
Mhm.
What's going on? Is there anything I can do? When something tragic happens, people in the agriculture community will come out in droves to help, but
Sure.
it shouldn't take a crisis or an emergency for someone to be able to visualize that somebody is, either depressed or anxious, or overwhelmed.
I think that's huge when we look at ag. We started Empire Ag to create that group of people where they've got a safe environment. We talk about business, we talk about relationships, we talk about employees, we everything. But it's a safe environment in which you can kind of let that stuff out. And I think you're right. I mean, we drive down the county road and we pass our neighbor, we give the old two finger wave,
Mhm.
and we'll work all day and we'll come back. And it's
Right.
just that's the 2 people that we interact with. It would be our wife and maybe the neighbor that we pass by, that's it.
Mhm.
And so having a safe environment where it's not viewed as weakness, I
Mhm.
think is crucial, for these guys. What are some of the unique stressors, uh, that are specific for agriculture, work that impact our mental health?
Over the last decade with working with this population, I have noticed that even though there is a tight knit community in these small rural areas, there is this underlying fear that if anyone senses any weakness, that that individual will turn on you and then try to buy.
Sure.
And so I hear that repeatedly. They're like, hey, I'm struggling, but I'm afraid to talk to my neighbors about it because I've had cases where people have called banks or said, hey, if this goes up for auction, I want to be involved in purchasing that. So there's this underlying fear with this population. Also, just time. They don't have a lot of time to drive somewhere, search out a mental health provider, which I mean, I can completely understand. And then trying to connect with someone that you will trust and that you feel comfortable with, just being vulnerable with. I think that even in my field, obviously, there is a lot of stigma with therapists or, what it says if you're seeing somebody. Um, and so that in itself, they would rather self medicate maybe with alcohol, prescription medication. So that's, one of the main things that grant did. It was, kind of researching and monitoring individuals that may get injured or hurt, and then they get addicted to opioids. So it's just multi level. And then there's a lot of generational issues that come into play. Everything seems fine. You're a third or fourth generation farmer, but there's a lot that comes along with that. Like, I know I've discussed multiple times with individuals like, hey, I'm working 110% and I'm still giving, half of what I make to family members.
I've worked on several of those, situations where we've tried to divide operations up. And it's funny because that right there is a huge contention. And it
Oh,
never, you put two or three people together and you're going to have some issues arise.
right. And with this population, how dare you disrespect our family name that has allowed you to even be in the position you're in?
Absolutely. It's been so big. I mean, and you get to looking at some of these estates that they're trying to divide up. Maybe two brothers got started farming. They had a little help from dad to get going.
Mhm.
They weren't given anything, but they were given an opportunity. And
Right.
then now you've got another generation stepping up to the plate.
Hmm.
How do we transition that without the contention and just getting all these emotions riled up? And is that a situation where you could kind of come in to kind of help?
And mediate, yes, and talk through and process it, because there is a significant amount of guilt with individuals. They don't want to disrespect their parents or their grandparents. They've been
Sure.
taught very typical conservative type views. Go to church, say your prayers, don't disrespect your family. You stay committed to your wife and your children. It's such a thin margin on everything they do in their lives, and they're tired.
Yeah.
So, yes, I do um, help families work through that. And mainly it's just the guilt for, having to go through that process. It's overwhelming for the youngest generation.
That's what I've noticed. I feel like sometimes when they sit at that table, they're not truly being true to themselves as far as, vocalizing what they would really like to see, how they would like to build off of the legacy that they've kind of been brought into. In essence, worked 20 years, 30 years, 40 years with nothing to show for it.
And the opportunity to make these changes and kind of keep up with what's going on in the country. We're dealing with generational issues where, you know, employees that they're working with are still using flip phones, and, you know, it's a shake of a hand. It's not, let's sit down and draw up the contract. My word is my word, and that's what we're going to go with. So, I mean, it's a different time, and it is extremely difficult to navigate.
Shay, I think something I mean, you've been in this business for a long time. Um, do you see a breakdown, I guess, of the different generations as
I
far as how the problems that they have or the way that they view the world? Um, as we move through, and we've got the millennials that are, in their late 30s and 40s, and um, Gen X. I mean, you kind of go through every age group that as they kind of step up. Are
Mhm.
you seeing differences in the way that they view the world and the way that the weight and these problems get processed?
Absolutely. What I typically see is just it's all or nothing, and it's just the inability to break free of the older generations, and they want to be respectful, and they want to be gracious, and keep this legacy alive. We need to be responding differently. We need to take the risk. There's just a lot of people aging out of the industry,
Uh-huh.
and things that are, a decade older than me, so 60 or 70 years old, and you don't really question that age group. And
Yeah.
so to have a grandson come in and be like, "Hey, I want to split this off, and I mean, it takes a lot of courage. And you're already so exhausted. Sometimes it's just too overwhelming to fight."
I think sometimes it's like, I think you can probably help those individuals get through that barrier, like that angst and kind of setting the tone for those conversations. Um,
Hmm.
kind of working through your emotions and maybe past experiences and things. And I know a lot of folks have sat at that kitchen table and they get that clammy feeling deep
Hmm.
down, or maybe it arises some anger and something that they can't control.
Typically anger, because I've had to educate a lot of this, individuals with this career background on what emotions look like.
Mm-hmm.
Because a lot of these individuals were just, I mean, as they grew up on, ranches or farms, you you did what you were supposed to do, or you were shown a natural consequence, which might have been some physical violence. I wouldn't necessarily say that abuse, but it was just how individuals taught their children to be respectful and how to be compliant with, daily chores and whatever. And that's so different today. So it is very, very difficult because there's a lot of underlying unresolved issues where individuals working now are like, man, I remember just having the crap knocked out of me. Like, if I even question anything, I was knocked off the tractor, or
Yeah.
I was drinking out of, a water jug that had no ice. I had one jug that lasted me all day, and you didn't question it.
Yeah. I definitely think that's huge.
Yes.
We've got a unique situation because I think a lot of us in ag, like, we're kind of
Mhm.
misunderstood in the communities
Right.
because there's so few of us.
Right.
And, and like you said, that being weak has definitely caused a rub where I don't think we've adequately addressed issues that have arisen.
Right.
And it's created a riff. And have you ever seen where it's kind of held individuals back in their business decision making?
Oh, absolutely. Because farmers, like where I'm from in rural up northwest Oklahoma, I mean, farmers to me are just larger than life. They're tough. Um, they're individuals you can trust. So to ask somebody two generations down to go to their grandfather and say, hey, I'd like to buy out or renegotiate this percentage. Um, and this individual, knocked the crap out of your dad and knocked the crap out of you. I mean, how are you going to, as an adult man in your 30s, go and be like, hey, I have a different vision for my family?
Sure.
Then
That
good. Go for your vision, sir.
there's been a lot of conversation on the internet, just different forums that I've followed about the different generations and how a lot of the 70 and 80-year-olds are still in the driver's seat. I
Oh,
mean,
absolutely.
love it, hate it. Like, as far as retirement goes, like, those guys are riding it until they're 6 foot under.
Yes, absolutely.
Are you seeing that
I'm seeing
across the
most
country?
individuals would prefer to wait until um, that generation, or, in lieu of having to have that face to face conflict,
Sure.
we'll just wait till grandpa passes and then,
Conversations get buried
right.
for 30 years and
Yes. But that will eat somebody up. And so when I describe to somebody, hey, what you're presenting with appears to be anxiety or depression, they're like, I don't know, I'm not anxious. They connect anxiety with like what you see on TV with like,
sure.
but that's not all that it is, or it's not even what it is. It's like intrusive thinking, ruminating thinking, negative, what if, worst case scenario.
That was my, I guess that was gonna be my next question for you is, when we talk about identifying when someone may need help, uh,
Hmm.
whether that's being depressed or anxiety, how does someone identify that?
Um, so for an adult male, typically they start, you know, feeling bad. They don't understand, the sleeping schedule gets messed up, which is already an issue for agriculture. Um, so sleeping issues, um, just constant worrying, um, intrusive thinking, what if, intrusive thoughts. Um, and so then things just get to where they can't manage. So they start self medicating, or they can. So either drinking or, prescription medication, um, because a lot of times they can't slow down to heal injuries appropriately.
Mhm.
So that's been an issue in our area where it's like they just want to call and keep getting more, medication to help deal with the pain so they can continue to work, because they can't not work, because then they won't be able to make a living. Um, so there is that. But also, if people around you start to notice, it's a high percentage rate for suicide completion for 65 plus in this career, and they're not going to talk about it. They're not going to, hey, I don't feel great today. I think I might end my life, or they go home and they complete suicide.
Mm.
They usually are respectful and do it in a place in their home, or where it's not going to leave a huge cleanup ish. I mean, it's really that quick. So we need to be very cognizant of people when their behaviors change, or if something traumatic happens with their farm or business or banking type situation. They can get really tunneled vision and thinking very quickly, where they don't see any way out.
Gotcha. That once you identify someone that possibly you feel like they're acting out of character, you feel concerned. What if friends, family, what do you do to help somebody like that that's in there?
You need to be completely transparent and pretty blunt with them. And if they, usually people will say, if you like, are you having thoughts of hurting yourself or ending your life? And they're like, yeah, every day. Well, they need to be immediately evaluated by a medical professional. And it's better to have lost a friend than for someone to lose their life. Because I always hear, well, I don't want to disrespect somebody or make somebody feel uncomfortable or have a feud in my area because I have called out my friend. But it is that simple. And then if they say, off the cuff, they'll be like, you know what, things would be better if I did, get a gun or whatever. You immediately, you can do a well care check where you contact, sheriff's department, or throw them in the truck and take them to the nearest ER. They'll be mad, but they'll get over it.
Mm-hmm. That's what I was curious, just with us being in rural America, just access to resources. I mean, is there, a bank of resources, networks, or anything that's out there available for us?
Yes, and I will forward you that information. But in the state of Oklahoma, you can call 988, where then somebody will talk to you immediately. And I think every state kind of has moved towards that model where you can meet with someone pretty quickly, and they will assess you over the phone. And if you don't meet criteria, then you will, they'll have a safety plan or whatever. I like individuals to go to the nearest ER and be face to face with a medical professional.
Gotcha. Well, this has been pretty heavy talk right here. Let's have a break. We're in luck. We have a sponsor today. It's going to be this guy. I'm going to sponsor this episode. So youragempire.com is going to be the sponsor today. The Empire Ag Elite Program is an annual membership for farmers, ranchers, and agribusiness owners who are ready to up-level all aspects of the whole of an operation by taking a deep dive into their books, their marketing strategy, in addition to peeling back the layers of their physical, mental, and spiritual health. To learn more, visit youragempire.com. Welcome back to the show. We have Shaye Reilly with Alpha Assessment and Counseling, and we're back. We just finished our kind of heavy talk around suicide, but let's kind of talk a little bit about counseling, because I mean, it sometimes you just need a little bit of help getting through things. With the cultural and societal factors within the ag community that contribute to the stigma surrounding mental health. How can this stigma be addressed? I mean, I guess what makes it to where it's normal for us to reach out to somebody like you?
Right. Well, access has made it, more or less of an issue for lots of people in, agriculture. So what many states have done they've been working with extension centers and, state of Oklahoma, you can go to your nearest, extension center, and they will put you with immediate contact with a mental health professional. And so a lot of agriculture-based businesses have really stepped up in regards to the increase in suicide rates with farmers and ranchers in the last, 2 or 3 years. So, just being okay with the fact that I think most individuals think if you're going to a therapist or a psychologist or a psychiatrist, that underlying you are, people use all types of words, crazy, mentally ill.
Sure.
Sometimes you're just depressed.
Yeah.
And so it is just simply being able to visit with somebody that doesn't have any bias, isn't going to contact your spouse, your friends. You just get to vent and kind of process and identify things that are issues for you.
So, like, if we were to meet with you, I mean, it would be totally confidential. Our conversation, that's where we can just let it out.
Right. And people discuss all types of things with their therapist. And I want to also encourage, you may not like the first person,
Sure.
And I remember when I first started, I remember my first client that fired me and I was devastated. I was like, you're going to fire me? Like, I don't understand. Like, I didn't do anything wrong. Well, not everybody's going to think I'm fantastic. So now 2 decades in, I'm just like, yeah, I may not be for you. So
Sure.
on my website, I have a list and it's under not your cup of tea, because I may not be everybody's cup of tea, but I've listed everybody in my community that might be.
Sure.
And so I probably had 5 people contact me this week asking me about referrals for a specific type. My mom needs this, my sister is struggling, my kids, and I'm happy to coordinate care with anybody. There is enough providers to go around. So don't settle for someone you don't connect with.
That was what I was going to ask, if it was kosher for us to kind of shop around, I guess, until we feel like, hey, I really like her or I like him, and
right,
that's who I want to work with.
Absolutely. And I mean, you don't need to maybe start out with saying, hey, I'm interviewing therapists, but because quite honestly, everyone has a waiting list. Everyone has been bombarded since the pandemic. Things have significantly increased and changed. Prior to the pandemic, if I were seeing a gentleman, he was court ordered. Men don't want to come to therapy. Men don't want to come and talk about, feelings and emotions and, things that are stressing them out or causing them to feel vulnerable. Now, my population is, heavy male based.
Sure. That's interesting. So how does it work as far as, like, say I choose you, it's a fee-based structure. Is there insurance involved, or how does that part work?
Yeah, all over the country. Again, with the pandemic, things have significantly changed. A lot of individuals are not taking private insurances, and so they'll provide you with a super bill, and then the client turns that into their insurance provider, and then they reimburse you.
Gotcha.
It's more streamlined for the provider. And you can find a therapist anywhere between, $100 to $200 an hour.
Gotcha. How do you determine, like, I roll into your shop, Shaye, you're going to work with me. How do we know how long you and I are going to work together? Or like, how do I know when I'm fixed?
Well, typically we make treatment plans that are about 6 months.
Okay.
And we develop treatment plan goals and objectives, and we work through those. And so, times shift and change. Sometimes people just need a couple of times just to vent, and for someone to say, look, these are normal feelings.
Sure.
You don't need to feel overwhelmed about feeling overwhelmed.
I think in this community in ag, it's always the comparison of our neighbors.
Oh yeah.
And so, like, those feelings of that, I just feel like that's a huge part for our community as they kind of look into that.
Absolutely. And, there's this, is anyone going to know that I'm coming to see you? And it is very structured and very, ethical. No communication with anybody else can be done. So, like, a lot of men will be like, "What if my wife calls you?" Well,
Mm-hmm.
or that doesn't. You can't call a mental health provider and say, "Hey, my husband started seeing you, and I want to know what he said about me." So,
Off limits
no.
there.
And a lot of stuff that I think people have in their mind is just it's so TV generated, and that's really not what it's like.
Gotcha. Yeah, it's not the norm, and I know we as a group struggle. We struggle financially, we struggle with relationships. There's just a lot of things, a lot of weight that you carry as an individual, and
Mm-hmm.
I think sometimes we try to fix it, but we do nothing but bottle it up, and then you know,
Right.
20, 30 years down the road, we dump it all on your lap.
Yes. I mean, and you do, you will continue to have symptoms, whether they're psychological or physical, if you don't deal with the stress.
So Shay, you brought up something I think like the stress, the anxiety, everything that we're carrying, it can manifest itself physically. What does that show up as?
Absolutely. Lots of things: heart disease, heart attacks, suicide, lots of health issues, psychosomatic issues, which would be like a physical complaint when it's really an underlying psychological issue. Lots of things, strokes. So the more trauma, the more stress, the less treatment, the higher percentage rate you'll have a physical medical condition down the road.
Gotcha. Shay, one thing that I hear a lot about is my relationship with my wife is I'm struggling there. I'm struggling with the kids. Um, is it something that I mean, sometimes if an individual comes to see you, if he kind of gets himself in a good spot, does it kind of fix some of those other problems,
Yes.
or do they need to have like group therapy, I guess, of the husband wife?
You can, do one or the other, or, a combination. Sometimes spouses do come in, it's a few simple steps to make some positive changes. First and foremost, you need to have a medical complete evaluation to have, blood work and make sure there's no underlying medical issues that are making you have, psychological symptoms. And so rule that out. And then, and if there's an issue, we want to optimize your health. And then start talking about things that will improve your mental health. And sometimes spouses are like, "Hey, well, I want to get involved," or they want to give their 2 cents to make sure the individual's being honest.
Yeah,
But, you know, there is a high rate of, relationship issues. It's a long, hard job and you're exhausted. And so intimacy struggles are often brought up. Parenting, there's reported not, feeling like there's not a lot of support with raising children, and just a lot of things in regards to expectations that aren't being met. So just if you change a few things, things do become easier.
kind of open up those communication channels and
Mm-hmm.
get things where everybody's on the same page.
Yes, communication is key, which is difficult for, you know, all people.
Absolutely, especially farmers and ranchers who are quiet, leave me
Yes,
alone kind of guys.
yes, I don't know if I told you when I spoke at my first agriculture type meeting. I was like, "Hello, anybody? Hello." I mean, I was just like, just real stoic, and I'm like, "I'm funny." So they are very private.
Talking about success stories, I mean, do you have any
Mhm.
examples of individuals in agriculture who, prioritized mental health and saw a positive outcome or result?
Absolutely. I mean, so many, and there are a lot of success stories. when I was on the Red Cross board for Northwest Oklahoma, and what prompted me to research and get certified in agriculture is there was an elevator crisis in a rural area outside of Enid, with two high school boys that were injured um, pretty severely. And one of those individuals, he was not a client of mine, so I feel comfortable with disclosing. He really took that tragedy and turned it into, what can I do with this tragedy and how can I reinvent myself? Now he has used the resources. Now he is a physician, but he really it was extremely difficult for lots of people involved. The individual running the elevator, the other employees, families,
Sure.
responders. And so I've always had a lot of pride with that gentleman. I hope he's changing a lot of lives with what he was exposed to.
Awesome. So you came to our elite retreat in Dallas.
Yes.
And spoke to all the farmers and ranchers that were there. What was your takeaway of being at that retreat? It's kind of a not a normal, I guess, event that.
No, and I mean, I was so encouraged, and it happened right at a really great time for me. And you met my husband; he came with me, but this is a very taxing career, and so it was very encouraging for me to understand and know that there are individuals out there helping this population, because it is something that's very dear to me. And I was employed at Oklahoma State University, and provided assessments for students and employees, and so I got to know Dr. Jason Beeman. He is the one that was doing the research for agriculture and ranchers, and got the grant. And so I started researching that and became very interested in it. And so I too, like you, I was like, there are no resources for this population. And if there were, these individuals don't want to travel an hour or 2 hours to go sit and talk to a therapist or anyone for that matter, because they need to be working.
Yeah.
So, I think it's such an honor to be involved with your organization, and you have changed. What I've learned with meeting these individuals is how much you guys have made an impact on their lives.
Awesome. I know it's been our mission to help save the American farmer and rancher just one at a time, and we try to take a really personal approach at them as an individual and their business and relationships, and just try to help them all the way around. And it's been fun.
Yeah, it says a lot about your integrity, because I keep hearing from people all over the United States how much of an impact you guys have had. And so that's super exciting.
That's awesome. Thank you. I appreciate that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
We're getting close to the end of the show here, and I always try to ask our guest, if you were to give farmers and ranchers any advice, what advice would that be?
If I had to give any advice, it would be to reach out to the individuals that are there to help you and ask the questions. And if you don't get what you need, please keep reaching out. It is a very lonely profession. There's a lot of time spent alone with just your thoughts. And so there are people that want to be an asset. It doesn't have to be very clinical. It doesn't have to be what your idea of therapy or services might be. It may be working with a community like you. And I just want to encourage them to take care of themselves, because, depression, anxiety is real, and it is plaguing, this community. So I just want to encourage them to reach out.
Absolutely. That was one of the reasons we wanted to have you as a trusted partner, is because I can walk them through this path, and when they feel comfortable,
mm-hmm.
and we've been sending them your way, and
I appreciate it.
It's been great.
It's been exciting for me. just getting to hear the stories and kind of understand that our country is really all of us in all the states are going through, very similar situations. So even though you may be on a tractor for 12 hours by yourself, your brothers are doing the same thing,
Absolutely.
and sisters.
Absolutely.
Yeah,
Yeah, it's the same. I think we always look the grass is greener on the other side,
yeah,
and like you said, we're such a close-knit group that we don't want people to see weakness. We don't want people to kinda get into that close space, but we need that. We need that
absolutely.
brotherhood of some sort,
Right.
to kinda help us through that. So,
Hmm.
I appreciate you
Absolutely.
being part of Empire Ag.
Yeah. Thank you for inviting me. And anything I can do to encourage people to attend your retreat, it was definitely, it was a shift in my career, and just seeing that there are individuals that want to make a difference.
Absolutely. Thank you for that.
Yeah, absolutely.
Well, that is it for your Ag Empire. Thank you for listening in today. Um, be sure to like and subscribe. Visit us on youragempire.com, and that'll be it.